Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Knowledge. Welcome to Brews and Reviews. And today we are talking about the monumental possibility of a J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar collaboration album. And I am sipping on a Sierra Nevada Torpedo Extra IPA. And that is an IPA from the beer company in Chico, California, coming in at 7.2%. So this is a good beer, and let's get into this conversation. The possibility of a K.Dot and Cole album has been teased for a long time by the artists themselves, starting back when both of these guys were young, when they were first putting out their first projects. They met early on in their careers in 2010, and ever since then they've been discussing a collaboration project, and the public has been discussing it. Various hangers-on and people around them have been discussing it as well. This past week, TDE President Punch opened up that conversation again by first saying on Twitter, quote, "0 tracks, not happening." So he seemed to immediately shut down the possibility of this monumental collaboration, only to draw that back later when he was quoted again on Twitter as saying, "Nah, I don't know, it might still happen." That's enough with this kind of anticipation that everybody wants to see an album like this. That's enough to open up the whole conversation again. And Twitter was blowing up. Hip-hop websites were blowing up. Everybody's talking about this possibility of a Cole and K.Dot collaboration. First, a quick history of J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar and their work together. Back in 2010, after first meeting, they said they had a fruitful studio session and they were working on top secret shit. Back in January of 2011 was when we first heard the first collaboration between the two. It was a song called Temptation, and it was never officially released. Some audio exists on the internet, and it's a bit choppy, but even with the background noise, it's a great track. In May 2011, they followed that up with Shock the World, another track that was a collab between the two that was never released. In July of 2011, we had Kendrick Lamar's debut album, the classic Section 80, and the song HiiiPower that closed out that album was produced by J. Cole. In May of 2012, they were on the song They Ready by DJ Khaled, and it also featured Big K.R.I.T, so it was kind of a top 3 of up-and-comers at the time. Since then, K.R.I.T has slid a little bit, although he's still putting out good production. He's not to the level that Cole and Kendrick certainly are, and they're standing in the rap game. In August of 2012, they were on the track I'm On 2.0 by Trae the Truth, featuring a bunch of other people, but these two were also on that track. In October of 2012, Cole produces Kendrick's The Jig Is Up, making it his second Kendrick Lamar song to produce. In June of 2013, Kendrick appears on J. Cole's Forbidden Fruit off of J. Cole's second album, but on this one, he's only on the chorus, a little bit disappointing. In November of 2015, there was what was called Black Friday, where Cole remixed Kendrick's song All Right, and Kendrick remixed Cole's song Tale of Two Cities. In December 2017, they were on the Jeezy track, American Dream. Each had a verse, and it's the last time we would hear them putting a verse on the same track on the guest spot they did for Jeezy's track, American Dream. In July of 2019, Kendrick appeared on J. Cole's compilation album on the track Under the Sun. And this was just a tease because K.Dot barely even did a chorus on that song. So this is how I know that something is probably in store, that they probably do have some tracks in the vault, because so far what we've heard of them together has just been snippets. It's been things that haven't actually been released officially. They've been doing guest spots on other people's stuff together, but they haven't released Kendrick officially having a verse on J. Cole's album, or J. Cole officially having a verse on Kendrick's album. So it's almost like they're saving those things for something greater. We've only heard the guest spots, the snippets, the unreleased songs, the production where Cole will produce for Kendrick, but not lay verses on those tracks. So what are they saving that concept for? You know that K.Dot could have gone off on Under the Sun, but instead he chose just to give a little kind of chorus, kind of speaking thing, a little cameo. So what is he saving that verse for? My argument today is that this could be a collab album on a scale that we've never seen. It could potentially, I stress, be the best collab album ever. And I'm going to break down why on this. And when I do so, now when I say collab album in this capacity, I'm talking about two MCs working together. I'm not talking about the MC producer album, which has been done in classic terms. Of course, Mad Villain, Bandana, Prime, Murs 316, and a whole slew of others. But I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about two MCs coming together. I'm also not talking about compilation or group efforts with more than just two MCs. We're talking about two MCs collaborating on an album together. The collab album with two MCs, a lot of them fall into the top 50 albums of all time. So I am going to discuss some classics here, and it's not taken away from these. It's not saying that a J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar album will be better than any of these. I'm saying that it has the potential to be something that's on a scale that we've never seen before. Getting right into it in the collab album discussion, I'm talking about first, The Chronic by Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. And even though this had Dr. Dre on the cover, even though it was just his name, this was a collaboration album between two MCs. But how does this differ from the possibility of a Kendrick and Cole album? For one thing, Snoop was an unknown at this time, and this album launched his career. So Cole and K.Dot, they both have several classic albums under their belt. They both rocked it down solo. So it's not like that Snoop Dogg aspect like he was on The Chronic, where they were launching a career off of this particular album. Also, Dre was Snoop's mentor. Snoop was his protege. There's not that dynamic with Cole and Kendrick. They're more competitors at this point. Neither one of them could be seen to be the mentor or the protege. And while some may have preferences of which one they like better, if you look at the actual raw skill, there's not one that stands out more than the other. Nas and Damien Marley, distant relatives. This was two people at the height of their careers and that were at the very top of their own genre. But it was meshing two genres together. So it was an interesting project. It was a great project. I love that. Some great reggae on there. Damien Marley is a king of reggae. Nas, of course, is a king of hip-hop. And it was great how this came together. But it's not two lyrical powerhouse MCs like we would see in J. Cole and Kendrick. It's not a clash of the hip-hop titans. Raekwon and Ghostface, only built for Cuban Linx 1 and 2. Now, of course, Cuban Linx 1 is one of the top 10 hip-hop albums of all time, probably top 5 hip-hop albums of all time, so it's not to diminish from that. But remember, the concept of what I'm talking about here is how these collab albums differ from a Cole and Kendrick collaboration. So, first off, Ray and Ghost were from the same crew. We'd already heard them debut together on 36 Chambers. We'd already heard a lot of that dynamic coming through. And while they could have been considered classic by the time this came out, they definitely had classic verses from the original 36 Chambers album. And even by 1995, those were remembered as classics. They hadn't yet rocked it solo. This was Raekwon's solo debut featuring Ghostface. So it wasn't like Kendrick that has several solo albums under his belt that are all classic in his own right, and J. Cole that has several classic albums under his belt that's rocked it with no features. This was these guys' first solo albums coming out together and collaborating together. And while it's stellar, while it's classic, not to take away from that at all, maybe a Cole and Kendrick album won't stand up to this at all. Those are some big shoes to fill. But I'm just saying that it does have the potential based on where these guys are coming from and their current stature versus Raekwon and Ghost's current stature when they had dropped Only Built for Cuban Linx. Mos Def and Talib Kweli are Black Star. Now, this is another probably top 10 album, one of my favorite albums of all time. I love it. It's arguably both MCs' best album, but both were mostly unknown at the time. This served as a debut for both Mos Def and Talib Kweli, and it's not like Cole and Kendrick, who are both numerous projects deep at this time. And they have stood alone solo. Talib Kweli and Mos Def had not stood alone solo at this point. Plus, there wasn't that competition dynamic. We accepted at the time that this album came out that Mos Def was the better MC. Of course, over time, I think Talib Kweli edged that out. But at the time of this album, you just accepted it based on the flows and where Mos Def was at that time, that he outshined Kweli, and Kweli didn't have a problem playing second fiddle to Mos Def. Cole and Kendrick, with their competitive nature and both of them wanting to be seen as number one, and they're now number one and number two respectively in the current hip-hop state, they would not come with that dynamic where one is better than the other. They would both be trying to outdo each other rather than the mutual kind of respect factor that we heard from Mos Def and Talib Kweli. Electronica and Jay-Z, a written testimony. Even though this was passed off as a solo album, this is definitely a collab album between Electronica and Jay-Z. And, you know, Jay-Z, he does spit fire on this. He's got some great verses. He sounds a little more inspired than he has on some of his other projects that he's done recently. But he's no longer at his height as an MC. So it's not like Kendrick and Cole, who are both at the top of their careers currently, putting an album together. Also, you feel like Jay-Z kind of did this out of necessity, more so than an artistic choice. It was more so like he's the label president, Electronica won't put out an album, so Jay-Z has to fill up these songs that Electronica has half done. And that's the kind of vibe I got from the album. While I did like it, a lot of other reviewers trashed it. I did like a written testimony, but you can feel that that it's not like an artistic value that Jay-Z was jumping on these tracks. He did so because he had to, just to get the album out there. Run the Jewels, LP, and Killer Mike. A lot of people forget that this is a collab album. A lot of people think of Run the Jewels as a group, but when this first one came out, it was two guys collabing. And they both had extensive solo careers. That kind of makes them like Cole and Kendrick. They both are lyrical gods. That kind of makes them like Cole and Kendrick. But they are underground gods. They haven't experienced the mainstream success, especially at that time, that Cole and Kendrick have at this point in their careers. Killer Mike, he was popular back when he came out with Outkast, but then he got more known as an underground artist. Same thing with LP. He's one of the most underground artists you can get, running the underground label Def Jux. But Run the Jewels coming together, that brought them to new heights. So we couldn't see that out of a Cole and K.Dot album. I don't think that it has the potential to propel them any further than they already are, which is maybe one of the reasons why it hasn't come out. But it would still have the dynamic of these people that already have classics coming out. And with them being mainstream and not underground, that's why it's a little bit different than Run the Jewels. And when I say a lot of people forget that this was a collab album, this album made LP and Killer Mike more successful than they'd ever been in their careers. They reached more commercial success based off this one album. So that's when they decided to form a group and have RTJ2, RTJ3. I will say additionally about this, some Run the Jewels songs, they get kind of old real quick. There's almost a formula to certain songs that they're sticking with, whereas pretty much all of Cole's catalog, all of Kendrick Lamar's catalog, most of those songs don't get old. They're just something that's timeless that you can listen to again and again and again, unlike some Run the Jewels songs. All right, so at this point, everyone's saying, but Knowledge, what about Watch the Throne? What about Jay-Z and Kanye, two of the biggest artists in the world, coming together for a collab album and Watch the Throne and having classic songs off that album? Both had #1 albums under their belt. Both were at the top of their game. Both were at the top of the mainstream, and they came together for this. And I just got one question, if you're saying any of those things, when we consider Watch the Throne as compared to a Cole and Kendrick album. which one, Kendrick Lamar or J. Cole, which one is Kanye? Enough said, right? Kanye, he's a classic producer, probably has better beats and will go down in history as an even better producer than J. Cole is, but he does not have the lyrical prowess that both of these guys have. He has not been able to execute just a lyrically deep thinking kind of album. His flows are not as stellar as we've seen Kendrick go off on things and Cole go off on things. And Kanye also has declined with time, whereas Kendrick and J. Cole just seem to be getting better, at least in terms of their flows. So which one is Kanye? Noticing that the Cole and Kendrick compilation has the potential to be a unique experience in hip-hop history and very different from collab albums that have come out in the past. Watch the Throne probably is the closest that we could get to this, but this concept of Cole and K.Dot coming together for an album is more like hearing somebody like Biggie and Pac together in, let's say, 95, or Jay-Z and Nas coming together in 2001, or maybe KRS-One and Rakim coming together in 88, or Eminem and Andre 3000 now. I'd love to hear that album. That might be the only one that I would anticipate even more than Cole and Kendrick, but we know we never hear that album anyway. That's completely in my imagination. So anyway, I hope you like my perspective on this. Thank you for watching. Watch more brews and reviews. You can click this video that's next to me, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.